This is SciFi Talks, and this is our idea to get the views on present and future of life sciences from academicians, entrepreneurs, and investors. For my today's episode, I have a talented guest and entrepreneur, CEO, founder, owner of a new startup, Nyoka. Paige has educational background of microbiology and environmental studies and permaculture design. So I might have missed some of your introductions. So can you, if you define yourself, how do you define yourself as a person, as an entrepreneur?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I like to kind of call myself an activist first, scientist second, entrepreneur third, because that's kind of how life has gone for me. So I usually am, inspired by a sense of like a problem that needs to be solved. And the environmental movement, is one that has just really called to me. And then learning out how I can actually be part of that has really been a lot of my scientific background and inspiration. And then entrepreneur third is, how do I get a solution out of the lab into the world, making the biggest impact possible. So that's how I'd kind of describe myself personally, and also, how I came to be an entrepreneur.
I was checking this your Facebook, and there was written eco-feminist and data nerd. What exactly is that term?
Yeah, ecofeminism, it's looking kind of at history and how do we value certain traits, and if we are undervaluing certain traits or overvaluing others, like how does that affect our culture? How does that affect our technology? And so part of ecofeminism is just kind of opening, I guess, like the lens of history and understanding the effects of industrialization and capitalism, and just wondering what it would have been like if traits like compassion or slowness were like at the forefront, or really valuing our ecosystem and our earth. So that's where the ecofeminism comes in. And data nut, that's just, I love data. I think best decisions are made with the best data possible, and if there's a lot of it, even better. And so that's really that's where that comes from.
Your background is biology, and you love data. Means you just love data, or are you also engaged in some data science projects or other?
I kind of dabbled in that, in my spare time, like doing different modeling. I attended a few like different coding kind of boot camps later on in my degree, and statistics are just so powerful. I love the insights, and it's really coming quite useful in business as well. Just getting really comfortable looking at numbers and getting trends out of that.
A lot of biology, it's going to be more interdisciplinary. So the data science is the core thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's actually a neat project that I think is such a good example of that, and it's in the States. It's called NEON, and it's the National Ecological Observatory Network, and they're taking like metagenomic data from different environmental sites all around the states, and they're combining that with a lot of different environmental data in terms of the climate. And now it's an ongoing project, and the data sets that they're creating are fantastic, and they're public, they're open source. So they're fantastic projects. A lot of work is being done now trying to actually get valuable insights out of all the data they're collecting. Anyway, just one off, I just think it's an amazing project, and it's kind of for me, it's like such a pinnacle of microbiology, of environmental like learning, and getting really good baseline data as our climate is changing to see how that actually affects the microbiome over time.
So, with the increase of the decrease in the cost of the genomics and this kind of thing, a lot of omics, the cost is decreasing, and the use and applications, we are identifying different applications, and so the value of data is also increasing.
Definitely.
So in this episode, we will be discussing more about the company. So what would be the 30 seconds elevator pitch for Nyoka?
Yeah, so Nyoka Design Labs, we're developing a cell-free bioluminescence system that's intended to replace all applications of chemiluminescence. And chemiluminescence is light that is produced by a chemical reaction, and it's toxic. It originates with like petrochemicals. It all ends up in the environment, whereas bioluminescence is entirely non-toxic, safe. Its components are biodegradable, so it has the potential to replace, like millions of tons of plastic waste and chemical waste from entering our environment every year. It's also an incredibly efficient, amazing reaction. I love enzymes. And so that's what we're working on. Really would like to transform that industry so that we only use things that are good for our planet.
And so let's start the journey of Nyoka from scratch. So let's talk about the problems and solutions and the idea generation process. So what is the meaning? But am I pronouncing the name correctly? It's a Nyoka?
Nyoka, yeah.
Oh, Nyoka, yeah. How does the name come from? Where does the name come from? What's the meaning of the name?
Mm-hmm. I actually met someone with the name when I was quite a bit younger, and I loved how it sounded. And so I was trying to come up with a name for the company. I looked up its meaning, and it's a Swahili word, and the meaning is snake. And the symbology around the snake is like healing and transformation and rebirth. And there's also some really interesting lore about, the cosmic serpent and the origin of DNA, and like the swirly snake matching the helix of the DNA molecule. So it just tied in a lot of concepts that I wanted to kind of put at the core of our company. So that's where the name comes from.
How did you think about this idea? Like there were different problems, right? But there's a very unique project or unique problem you chose. So how did you generate that idea for this? How did you identify the problem? And later, how did you identify the solution for this?
I think, I took a very kind of serendipitous path, because it wasn't like I looked at different markets of the world and identified their most painful problems. That's not how I started. I had always been kind of in love with bioluminescence, just as something that existed in the world. I still remember one of my first times, swimming in the ocean and being surrounded by bioluminescence is one of my top, memories of all time. And that was part of my kind of desire when I entered my microbiology degree, was to actually study bioluminescence and learn more about light and enzymes, and how it worked. And it just always has fascinated me. And then earlier on in my university life, I volunteered at a music festival on the environment crew. And I literally was picking glow sticks out of the ground, that had been like trampled in by the attendees. And that's where I got the idea first. Like, could we do this differently? Could bioluminescence be used instead of this? And that was just an idea at the time. It hadn't completely transformed my life yet. But then as I started to get more into biotechnology and understand some of the sustainable applications, learned about industrial biotech and the creation of molecules, using like radically more sustainable manufacturing methods. It was just an industry that I fell in love with. And, halfway through my degree, I was like, I got to see if I can do this. Like, is it possible to make a bioluminescent reaction actually work in the context of a glow stick? And, I saved up money. I was working at a sustainable company. Then I ended up going traveling, and I met with every bioluminescence researcher who would email me back. I ended up studying bioluminescence around a bay in Puerto Rico and learned about the conservation of bioluminescent ecosystems and how important that is, even for our future development work, to have living, bioluminescence that's, still evolving out in the world. And then eventually, I had a prototype. I had something that I could actually pitch with. And that's when I started to really become an entrepreneur. And I'll be honest, I wasn't comfortable even calling myself an entrepreneur to start. In my environmental studies background at UVic, it's very anti-business. But as I got more into the industry, I was just so inspired by the other companies that were really using business to create absolutely necessary changes in the world. So now I'm more proud to be an entrepreneur. And again, I say it was fairly serendipitous, because at the time I didn't know how big of a problem the chemiluminescence was. I found out that chemiluminescence actually can be cytotoxic and genotoxic, and it's used in applications even beyond glow sticks. And I also found out that glow sticks were originally invented by the US military. There's at least 1 billion, if not more, used and thrown out, every single year. And it's really been through years of research and interviewing people and really getting to understand the problem that I realized that this was actually a very viable startup. And, that's taken kind of years of understanding, and now is, I talk about it in like 5 minutes as a pitch, but it represents years and years and years of research and effort to get there.
You were only involved during the previous phase.
Yeah, I started Nyoka as a solo founder, and I've worked with many people over the years, and it's really starting to solidify into a super solid team. But that's a difficult part of a startup, because you don't really know what you're looking for at the beginning, and it's taken a lot of growth and good and bad to get to the point where now where we have a really committed and solid team working on this as well.
Yeah, so like most of the biotech founders they think that the funding is the major problem. So how do you solve this problem?
It is a major problem. I usually tell like early founders, especially if they're starting on their own and don't have a prototype, to do everything you can, with your own money, like whatever savings you have, if you really believe in your idea, to get a prototype or some proof of concept, because that will be essential, not only in getting investment, but also getting grants, and also convincing people that, your project has some legs to it and they'll want to work with you. So that's number one. The second part, we've been very fortunate here in Canada. There's quite a lot of government support, not only for biotech research, but also for clean tech. So we've been able to subsidize a lot of our costs through government grants, and tax credits that they have for these type of companies. We also started to look for different investments. And so we took part in IndieBio, which is a world kind of leading biotech accelerator program. And so that was amazing. They were our, very first investors. And it's difficult to get funding. I don't want to make, that was all, came with a lot of effort and a lot of sacrifice, just in terms of, carrying a lot of the initial work with your own funding. And so, I worked part-time all the way up until we got our first investors.
How big is the problem exactly?
In terms of the market, or like the environmental impact?
Yeah, in terms of the market.
The market, yeah. So we estimate that the glow stick industry itself is worth over $4 billion, and then the total chemiluminescence industry, including other applications of chemiluminescence like research, is itself at least another $4 billion, if not up to another $8 billion on top of that. So it's a huge industry, and there's a lot of chemicals being made and produced every year for it.
So your plan is to completely replace all the chemiluminescent glow sticks?
Yeah, that's the dream.
And what's the solution? Like, if you are comfortable to share some of the things, like it's a biology, but what exactly thing is going on inside?
Yeah, so the solution basically is, it's going to look the same, it's going to work the same. It's a biodegradable, non-toxic glow stick, available in many colors. But what's inside, instead of chemiluminescence, is the biotech. So it's an enzyme-based reaction that is non-toxic, but produces, light that you can see.
So there is no bacteria, right? There is no microbes. There's one.
No. Yeah, and that's one of the key factors that I really leaned into at the beginning with the product development, because living microbes, you have to take care of them. They also, really, for anything that's used outside of the lab, there's very important regulations that need to be taken into consideration. So with the light wand, we only use a cell-free system. It's a simple enzyme, so there's nothing living inside of it, and that means it's shelf stable. It lights up exactly when you need it. You don't need to feed it, or keep it alive.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And then there isn't also the risk of any kind of genetically modified organism, in the wand. So there's nothing living at all.
If I want to buy, what's the price for that?
We're still not at production. We did a small kind of trial run where we were raising money, and we were selling them for $12 each. But this is the amazing part of the biotech itself, is that the bioluminescence reaction is so much more efficient than chemiluminescence. Enzymes have really been evolved for millennia to get to the point of being like one of the most effective ways to like break apart a molecule and create a photon of light. So we expect that, with more R&D and bioprocess development, that we'll get our light wands to be at cost or potentially even less than chemiluminescence is right now.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about a business model. So is it a B2C business model?
We have sold some B2C because we get a lot of, inquiries, but we're really focused, what we learned, and this was a hard lesson, first couple of years of a startup is you'll generate some excitement, you'll get some people who want to buy from you, and then all of a sudden you're managing like one order here, 5 orders there. It's hard. B2C is definitely hard. And so recently we've decided to shut that down and really only focus on business to business, because there's large industries, that use glow sticks, and it just makes sense in terms of the less capacity that a startup has to really focus on larger clientele and work with distributors who then would potentially be the ones who'd be selling it to individuals.
Let's talk about the marketing. So how do you convince the consumers to buy the product? Or can we just attract the people or the consumers with the eco-friendly term?
I think it has to be both. If it's eco-friendly, but it costs a crazy amount more, then it's just less of a competitive product. And so we're really focused on having both. So having a product that is competitive in its price, but then also has all of the added features of the sustainability component, and also just being really fantastic, applications of biotechnology. So there's a few companies that I love who are, in the biotech industry that are working to make things that, lots of people can use. And one of my favorites is Not Milk, and they've developed, a really good, really good plant-based milk, and they're currently sold at grocery stores, all across South America and North America. And they're as competitive in their price, have a really low environmental footprint, and are really, data informed kind of in their design, and they have fantastic branding. So I really look up to, a few other biotech companies and how they've done their go-to-market, and they've been quite successful.
Yeah, also sometimes you are just focusing on a glow stick, but do you have any other plans to stick to other products too? Because sometimes when you know that your product is working and you are quite sure that your product will work, then you might go to other products too. So what do you think about this?
Definitely. I mean, I think one of the most amazing days in my life is I got an email, from someone at NASA who wanted to try out our bioluminescent formula for something that was, not in the context of a glow stick. And so, this is the neat part when you get started, doing marketing, getting the word out on what you're developing, is that there's brilliant people who might think of other applications that you would never think of, And so with what we're working on, there's so many potential applications that we're curious about. And then we've had some potential project partners, reach out to us with their ideas that we're now collaborating with. So there's definitely a lot of applications beyond glow sticks. And one of the biggest ones is in research. As I mentioned, the use of chemiluminescence in labs around the world is as big of, if not a bigger problem than glow sticks. The reason why we're focusing on glow sticks to start, though, is because there's huge pressure right now in terms of plastic bans. And so all around the world, there's, legislation coming down banning single-use plastics that have a commercially viable alternative. And companies are really feeling the effects of that. And so there's really a pressure point happening right now in that industry. And because glow sticks are single-use plastic, when we have a solution that is, cost competitive, produced en masse, we can actually help trigger the banning of single-use plastics. So it's a market that's really ready to have a sustainable solution for it. Green chemistry, it's not as legislated. I think it needs to be talked about more because it's the literal materials that we use. So the green chemistry play for the research industry, it's a longer term goal, absolutely.
Is it a patented technology?
Yes. So that's the first thing I did before I incorporated was I applied for our first patent. And then so all of the work that we're doing so far is also patentable. And this application of bioluminescence, hasn't really been focused on before. And so right now we have quite an open patent landscape that our development work will be go through the patent cycle before we commercialize anything.
Yeah, you say that you are a data nerd. So do you think in this kind of company, in this kind of biotech company, so data can play some role?
Absolutely. One of the projects I'm excited for coming up this year is actually some like rationally informed protein modeling that we'll be doing with a company down in the States called Aperium Bio, and they do, machine learning informed protein design. And that's based on huge data sets and really draws on the understanding, of decades of research and development in terms of understanding how proteins work, how proteins fold, how enzymes work, and how they interact with different molecules. And so it's absolutely something that we're wrapping into our product development.
So what does a perfect team look like for you, and how does the team look like in Nyoka recently?
I've been incredibly fortunate. My two kind of people on the management team with me are fantastic and have more startup experience than me, have different skill sets than me. And so one of the things I always try and tell new entrepreneurs is to find people who are different than you, and also understand what your skills are and the limits of them so you can really complement those within a team. So for example, one of my co-founders, their background is in bioprocess engineering. So it's more on the actual manufacturing and production side of a biotechnology. That's one of the ways where it's basically getting something, it's that kind of unknown between having something work in a lab and having it work on a commercial scale is their realm of expertise. So, great skill set to have on any team that's working in on a scientific innovation. And then our other team, our COO, their background is in business and specifically on commercializing innovative products, and they're personally have great values around sustainability and real human-centered businesses. So yeah, I think the part that's been really essential is having focus on product, but a really keen focus also on the business and in terms of the numbers, and the metrics that we're hitting. So right now, I would say an ideal team would be to really build on that. We're not at the point where we're, selling every day. But I think one of our next big additions will be someone who has that sales and industry experience, who really understands the customer pain points that we're solving and can speak the language of the customer. And one of our newest additions to the team, which is just fantastic, is someone whose whole career has been focused on enzyme development. We got a government grant, which is how we managed to land someone so fantastic for our team. So their whole postdoc work has been on enzyme engineering, and now they're working on our team to specifically develop the bioluminescence.
Sometimes is it difficult to hire or bring some people who are more smarter than you or more experienced and senior age-wise? So is it more difficult to bring such people in the team?
It can be intimidating, I think it's also one of the most essential skills that you can have as a founder is to really be, humble and understand that you don't know even 10% of what it will take, to really get your idea out into the world. So I think one of the things I've tried to cultivate is just to be a really good listener and to understand the gaps in my knowledge and work to fill those. Now the people on our team know so much more than me about what needs to happen next. And it's the best position to be in as a founder, because then you can go out and speak to the quality of the team that you're building. And it's really, I think, quite fundamental for anything to be successful.
And also I see that in most of the biotech products, the affordability becomes the most issue. So is it the same? Is it going to be the same problem in this glow stick too?
Oh, definitely. And I think in startups too, it can be rough because you kind of have this point where your product will work and be cost competitive at scale. But getting to scale, getting through lab phase, prototype, early manufacturing, volume tests, it takes a while before you could ever be at scale. And until you are at the point where you're doing like 100,000, 1,000,000 units, for something like ours, which is a small product, it's way more expensive to start than it is to like get to that point and then keep it going. And so that's actually really informed our go-to-market strategy, where we're looking at some higher priced applications that we can sub in for at the beginning, knowing that people are already paying a higher price point. And then for our kind of later stage market, that's when we're looking to be actually more price competitive across a range of applications.
Are you scared of the competitors? Like not only the companies which are producing the chemiluminescent glow stick, but also in the future, like because iGym and a lot of SynBio and the biohacking movement is going in, and it has given the chance for the people to hack any biological tools or your glow stick or your enzyme production. So what's a trick to fight with those competitors?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, for any startup. When I was just starting, I was like, should I even talk about this? Like, then someone else is going to try it, I think the best thing I did was just get started and actually be kind of loud about it after the first patent was filed, because you kind of then make it known that, there's already investment and resources going towards you being the person who is solving that problem. Right now, we're the only company in the world that is focusing on this application for cell-free bioluminescence. And, I hope it stays that way for a while, definitely. There's also that thing, if you're the first mover on any given problem, you're the one who's doing the very hard work of kind of navigating through the dark. And so I don't expect us to be, in this position forever. I would like to be in the position where our company is successful, and has gone to a point, maybe we could acquire, like the best new tech, like in this industry. So there's an absolute push, if you're the kind of first one who's solving something, you have to give it your absolute best shot. You have to be the best that you can. Can't be afraid of competition, and start to think ahead of how you could actually benefit from other people working on similar problems, So it's good to know what other companies are up to and understand their pain points. But yeah, you gotta go big, gotta go fast. And that's really the only way to stay ahead.
So you think that patent is not going to save you from the competition, right?
Oh, patents don't save companies. Like they're an important asset to have, especially if someone's investing in your company, but getting involved in like a legal battle, especially over, let's say a different enzyme or something, it's definitely not what you can consider like the be all and end all towards stopping your competition. It's a legal strategy. It's something that's very important if you want to get investment. But in terms of just the actual go-to-market and being like the best company, the most reliable company, with the best technology, like that's really the competitive play that needs to be there, along with having the stand ground, the strong ground to stand on with a patent.
Yeah. And do you think that for most of the startup founders, they have a confusion? I mean, early founders or some enthusiast who wants to do their own business, they have the one confusion about the education background. So do you think the education background is needed, the same for the biotech startup?
Mm-hmm. Having the language to speak now to the team has been, I would say, very important. I think I would feel very out of my depth if I didn't have a technical background working in a technical company, because then, when you're speaking to your new lab team and they're talking to you about, I don't know, needing a backup -80 freezer, and you're working on the budget, you understand the importance of that, from a personal level. Even talking about new ideas, for different formulations or ways to think about the enzyme development is something that I love to think about. It's something that is really where I enjoy spending time, and also then can have really productive, fun, exciting conversations with the technical team, and I get to learn, alongside it. So I do think it's very important. I've talked with a few founders, who don't have as much of a technical background or are more in business. And I just really encourage them, take an evening class, like find something online. If it's something you love and it's a technology you want to learn more about, spend some time getting yourself acquainted, learning the language, understanding the good and the bad of the technology and the current state of the industry. It just gives you that much more power and that much more ability to communicate as a founder.
A lot of mushrooming incubation centers, awards, summits, and do they really help in the entrepreneurship?
Oh, there's so many. I would say, choose a couple that really offer a lot and are very targeted not only to the type of industry you're in, but also the stage of company that you're at, and ideally one that brings a lot to the table as well. It is really helpful to be part of these programs. And you really get into it what you put into it. And that's something that I kind of learned over time too, where if you're really engaged and you spend time with your mentors and you get to know them, even when you're done the program, they'll be there as part of your support network. And as much as I sometimes wish, traveling and showing up in person, going to conferences, COVID has kind of been a silver lining in terms of so much being on Zoom, because it just saves time and money. And as a startup founder, you have neither. But going to the Bio Summit, one of my most helpful mentors and the companies that I now have, that are, kind of friends with some of the founders, I reach out to them for advice, for introductions, to talk over problems I'm having. That's invaluable. You need to be surrounded with people who understand what you're going through, because it's very difficult, and there's definitely ups and downs that are hard to navigate. And talking with people who've done it before, it just makes it so much better. And often you'll make better decisions because of it. So if you don't have a network, in your industry, I'd say really start there. That's actually really where I got started. And then once you've cultivated that, you can put less time and effort into it, but really maintain those connections that you've made.
Let's talk more about the learning, your experiences. So if you want to start a next startup other than this company, so how would that startup look like? And what problem would you solve? I mean, what problems would be more sexier to solve?
I think about this a lot, and it's not necessarily even a biotech solution, but one of my pet peeves as a person is all of the concrete roads that cut apart ecosystems. I'm a big ecosystem fragmentation nerd, and what we're doing to our Earth's ability to adapt to climate change by cutting apart all these ecosystems, that used to be fundamentally connected, really limits our ability to adapt to change, and the adaptation will not be in harmony, with across wide ranges of the planet, and we're just continuing to chop it apart. So one of the main ways that we can reduce that is through permeable surfaces, because that prevents the sterilization that happens underneath roadways. And one of the main ways that ecosystems stay connected, which you didn't mention before, is through these underground networks of mycorrhizal fungi and bacteria and the root systems of trees and plants. And so by having a permeable system, you're taking away these sterile zones, and you're allowing that ecosystem to still remain connected, even if there's, development happening. And so that's what I would love to spend my career on, maybe when I'm 40, if Nyoka is successful, we get an exit or an IPO or something. I want to work on problems that businesses maybe isn't even the best vehicle to solve. There's only so much that can be done within a capitalist kind of economic system. There are problems that need solving that will not give someone a profit, and those are often the problems that are most likely what we really need to be focused on. So that's my goal, after, learning about business and a startup, learning how to fundraise, learning how to build teams, learning how to get, communicate the value of what you're doing. I would love to apply that to bigger problems that maybe aren't being solved right now in the context of a business.
That's right. And also, when we talk about biotech, mainly for the outsiders, when they talk about the biotech or when they hear someone talking about the biotech, someone easily remembers or it reminds them of the healthcare system, but not about the climate. And there are a lot of things
Yeah,
that is touched by the biotech. I think all
absolutely.
these things
Oh,
can be
I
described.
would love to say like one little piece on that because I think it's so important, just around having thriving, biodiverse, healthy ecosystems. Um, we get our data from the earth, every single enzyme, every single biological process that
Yeah,
the whole industry of biotech is built on, who has come from our environment. And so I think there's such power in the biotech industry to really like focus on ecosystem conservation, for the future. There's so much innovation that can happen, like, even just like in a teaspoon of soil and like figuring out what's there and what we can learn from it. All the enzymes that we use come from bioluminescent organisms in some of the rarest ecosystems around the world. Like we wouldn't have a company or a solution if those were dead, if those had, maybe in 100 years, if they had been developed. Like we literally wouldn't have anything to work with. And so I know I'm getting passionate, but like, I just believe in this so much. And and the point I made before about, business sometimes not having the economic like meaning or reason to conserve something. I really think that's where biotech can come in and be like, there's actually an economic reason, there's an innovative reason to like protect these like thriving ecosystems and to really cultivate that. And especially around protecting, some of the most thriving, like biodiverse, incredible like places in the world have been, managed and created by like indigenous peoples worldwide. And it just ties into so many things. Anyway, so yeah, I'd love to get more into that in the future, in my career. But right now, I'm like laser focused on getting this thing up and off the ground, so that hopefully in the future I can, do a lot more with my time and with the career.
yeah. Sometimes so people say that it's very fun to work in a company or work for the one company. But some people think that if you go to a company, then you have to just focus on one product or one kind of innovation, but you can't go or think other projects. So what do you think that can we think if you ever think about going to the healthcare system, can you think that do you have that flexibility? Yeah.
I always encourage people, like to like I think focus is so important, and that's been a recurring theme for me and my company to cut out, and like be laser focused on what we need to do. But within that, like as a person, I know one of the best things that I've done recently is spend a few hours a week bringing together a group of other founders, and now we have a standing circle where we talk to each other about some of the good and the bad and the personal, about running a company. And so I always spend a little bit of time doing something that's a little bit different. And that's been such a benefit to me because then you're learning from other people, then you're thinking about problems that aren't your own, and there's always learning in that. So I'd say, I always encourage people on our team to like, if they get an opportunity to do some consulting or consider like another problem, I think it just adds so much value to that person's life and also, to their work. So yeah, flexibility is important. So is focus.
And with your experiences, so what precautions will you follow if you have to start a next startup?
I think I'm constantly feeling like this is my first company. I constantly, like every 3 months, I feel really dumb because I just learned something that I wish I had learned or knew like a year ago or 6 months ago. And so like, I'm so excited to be at the point where I can actually start fresh, I think, and apply that. But also like, it kind of reflects life in that way. Like the only thing you can do is apply the learnings you have to like the life you're living in front of you now. I think if I were to start another company, though, one of the biggest things would actually be my personal level of confidence. Like when I was getting started, I felt I had such imposter syndrome. I really felt like I didn't belong, like in the startup world. Everyone was so fancy, and had like PhDs or like, for pitching, and they had like backgrounds at Cambridge. And I know, like at the beginning, I felt really like I shouldn't be there. I didn't belong. And, it's taken a while to cultivate some of that self-confidence. So it'd be really neat, I think, to just it's something that doesn't go away. Even if the startup fails, you've learned so much. So I think the best thing is actually just to go do it. If someone's listening to this and is thinking about it, there's only so much you can learn through books or thinking about it. But I would say all of my best and also some of my most difficult but valuable lessons have come from just getting started.
This growing trend of the synthetic biology and growing advancements, what do you think the next 20 years look like with the biotechnology?
I mean, I really focus on industrial biotechnology, which is more around the production of materials and chemicals. So I can't talk a lot about health tech, so I'll tell you that. But that is, I think, it's kind of an unknown. I don't hear industrial biotechnology getting talked about in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, for example. You hear a lot about carbon capture. There's the 5 top ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but looking at manufacturing and the materials that we use, so many are based on petroleum products, and with industry, and also there's so much waste that's produced at every single stage, to create a certain molecule. And that's where the application of these enzymes, and microbes to produce molecules in a way that produces much less, if any, waste in something that's non-toxic. It can be done at room temperature. There's so many benefits to using an actual biotechnology production method as opposed to a chemistry method or a synthetic method. So I would love to see, I think that's going to take off. It has it hits all the points with the UN development goals that countries are trying to meet, by 2030, in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing the level of pollution that enters our environment, offering meaningful, valuable and also educated work to people. And also, it's a huge industry. The production of goods is everything. It's everything you can see and touch. And so I think there's huge opportunity for transformation in industrial biotech, and there's a lot that's already started, but I'd like to see a lot more.
Yeah. So what I think about the fluorescence and the luminescence is that this is the thing which is making the biology more interactive.
Yeah.
Biology was no more interactive before, but now with the advancement in the fluorescence and the bioluminescence, the biology is being more interactive. Also with the synthetic biology and the different engineering principles, you can do different iterations. So biology is becoming interesting.
Yes, that's my little bit around the light wand and the work that I do that I love so much. Is that it's biotechnology you can see, and understand and hold in your hand, and it's something that I hope eventually everyone gets to see. I wish. I know right now in high schools, there's so much focus on coding. I wish there was that much focus on the genetic code, on biotechnology, because it's so powerful. And I think that I didn't learn about biotechnology even as a field until later on in my degree, and I'm just so fortunate that my chemistry professor at high school told me that there was a whole field called microbiology. I got so lucky, and it's changed my whole life. I really wish I had known more about it when I was younger, because it really would have given me even more of a reason to choose this path for my degree program. And I literally just got so lucky.
Okay, so do you think we can make any collaboration strategy in countries like Nepal where we can make biology fun, or where you can find your customers there too?
I would love that. Yes. Yeah, one of the things I'm excited for, and maybe we'll be at the point in a year-ish where we're also doing educational kits, because working with cell-free bioluminescence or cell-free anything, it's so safe. So in a classroom or as part of a education kit, it's really stable. It's not going to die on you, and it's really safe, and there aren't the issues around actually shipping genetic material or living organisms or anything genetically modified. So I'm really excited about those kind of applications too.
So I think we're at the end. So thank you so much for your time, and hope your company makes a great impact. So at the end, how can someone who wants to connect with you, who can find about you and your company?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really been such a joy. The best way to stay in touch, we have an email list. You can find it on nyokadesignlabs.ca, and the pop-up should smack you in the face after 5 seconds. You can also follow us on social media at Light by Nyoka across all platforms.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.